Thank you. We'll hear from Janaea Scott. Thank you, Janaea, for being here, from
Hi.
the Energy Commission.
Good afternoon, chairs and members. Thank you so much, Senator Bell and Senator Wieckowski, for inviting me to be here today. My name is Janaea Scott, and I'm the public member at the Energy Commission, and I'm lead on transportation issues.
Okay.
I am here this afternoon to provide an update on the Energy Commission's Alternative and Renewable Fuel and Vehicle Technology Program. So that's the acronym you'll see, ARFVTP, and its role in helping reduce transportation sector greenhouse gas emissions. I'll also give you an idea of how our program tracks these emission reductions and other benefits. So I'll start with an update on the Commission's Alternative and Renewable Fuel and Vehicle Technology Program. It is now in its 8th successful year in helping to support renewable fuel and advanced vehicle projects in the state. The program was created by AB 118 in 2007 to provide financial incentives towards innovative transportation and fuel technologies that help California meet its energy, clean air, and climate change goals. Funding for the program was recently extended by Assembly Bill 8 through January 1st of 2024. Since 2009, when the program's first project solicitations were run, the program has invested more than $547 million in a portfolio of about 470 clean transportation projects. These projects include commercial vehicle demonstrations and deployment, vehicle manufacturing, fuel production, fuel distribution infrastructure, and research of innovative technologies. They also include investments in critical market and program support functions, such as outreach and marketing, and in workforce training. In your packet that I've provided for you, I've got a summary slide of our investments to date and a lot of the numbers that I'll run through in my presentation, so you'll have that background information there. Okay. We're working on supporting Governor Brown's zero-emission vehicle goals, and on electric drive, we've invested about $163 million for electric drive charging infrastructure, cars, truck demonstrations, and manufacturing. On the ground, this has resulted in funding for nearly 9,400 chargers throughout California, plus supplemental funding to the Air Resources Board Clean Vehicle Rebate Project for 21,000 vouchers, and some exciting deployment opportunities for electric trucks with the rollout of UPS's all-electric delivery trucks, which you may have seen driving around the streets here in Sacramento, and also all-electric buses on the road in Stockton, California. In the biofuel space, we've invested $158 million for biofuel production and fueling stations, and that includes 44 low-carbon biofuel projects, most of which use non-food waste-based feedstocks. These projects are anticipated to have a new production capacity of 145 million gallons per year. On hydrogen, which is also a zero-emission vehicle, we've invested about $94 million in hydrogen stations, fueling standards, and truck demonstrations, which will provide for that early network of new and refurbished hydrogen fueling stations throughout California. And these are starting to come online now, with more to come online through the end of the year. So at the end of last year over in West Sacramento, we had an opportunity to open up the Lindy hydrogen station, which was pretty exciting. Let's see. We expect to have up to 54 total stations by early 2016. And another exciting development in this space is the new infrastructure model that's been developed by First Element Fuels. They won funding for 19 of our 28 awarded stations that we awarded in July, and they're working together in partnership with Toyota and Honda to help expand the network of hydrogen fueling stations. In the natural gas space, we've invested $95 million for natural gas trucks and fueling stations, which translates to funding for over 2,700 natural gas trucks and 60 compressed natural gas fueling stations. On the workforce development side, we've put in about $25 million, which is being used to train 13,000 technicians across 600 businesses in the state. Training is being provided to Californians so they can learn topics like electric vehicle charging infrastructure installation and maintenance, or how to work on the electric vehicle manufacturing techniques for the vehicles that we're trying to get out on the roads. Each year, with input from our advisory committee and other stakeholders, the Energy Commission adopts an investment plan that describes how program funding will complement existing public and private investments, including existing state and federal programs. Our investment plan is then used as a guide for awarding funds. Funding this large portfolio of about 470 projects was the result of the Energy Commission issuing nearly 24 solicitations and reviewing more than 600 technical proposals from the entities that were seeking alternative and renewable fuel and vehicle technology program funding. The demand for the ARF VTP funding nearly always exceeds the available amount, and the Energy Commission is able to award only about $1 for every $1.80 in qualified funding requests. This means about 45% of the qualified advanced technology transportation projects submitted to the Energy Commission are not able to be funded. Consequently, the Energy Commission is exploring opportunities to better leverage the funds available to make our ARF VTP dollars go further. To date, the vast majority of the program funds have been allocated on a competitive grant basis, seeking the most qualified technology development and demonstration projects. But we are looking at alternative financing options that can leverage limited state capital funds in new ways and may prove effective at attracting private investment capital for technologies that are more commercially mature. As an example, just last week at our business meeting, we approved an electric vehicle loan loss reserve pilot. This will expand the availability of electric vehicle charging infrastructure funds to small businesses, while also increasing the leverage of the ARF VTP funds. This loan loss reserve program is designed to incentivize qualified lenders to finance the acquisition and installation of electric vehicle chargers by small businesses in California. Under the program, eligible borrowers or businesses apply for a loan through lenders or banks that are certified to participate in the program. I'm really excited about this program because it gives us also an opportunity to reach a set of people who may not apply for our traditional electric vehicle charging solicitations. Could be potentially a mom and pop business who's looking to, as they make additional capital improvements, also add in a charger. And this program will allow them to be able to do something like that. So I'd like to talk to you about the second question you asked, which is the program's contributions to reducing transportation sector greenhouse gas emissions. Beyond the accounting of the program funds, the ARF VTP also takes very seriously accounting of the program's contributions to reduction of California's transportation greenhouse gas emissions. We use the National Renewable Energy Lab, NREL, to help us with these estimates. And the total estimates of greenhouse gas reductions of a subset of the projects funded to date range from about 3.4 to 5.3 million metric tons annually by 2025. We anticipate that this number of greenhouse gas reductions will continue to grow as our project investments grow. There is $1 billion in program funding anticipated through December of 2023. The existing law also asks the Energy Commission to provide preferences to those projects that maximize the goals of the Alternative and Renewable Fuel and Vehicle Technology Program and lays out 11 criteria for us to follow. So those projects include those that help transition away from petroleum to a diverse portfolio of fuels that are consistent with climate change policy, help reduce air pollution, and provide economic and other social benefits. Each of the criteria provided in the ARF VTP statute is used to varying levels in each ARF VTP solicitation as a series of weighted scoring factors for project selection. The weight factors are adjusted to fit the characteristics of each technology area. So if you think about what we would be looking for where to put electric charging infrastructure in place, that's very different than what we might be looking for when we're thinking about how to do a workforce training grant. So that's what I mean there. Assembly Bill 8 formalized a new funding preference, the greenhouse gas benefit cost metric, which is tons of greenhouse gas reduced per dollar spent. But while that's new in statute, the Energy Commission staff has been applying variations on considerations for greenhouse gases reduced to their project selection processes since the first solicitations went out in 2009 and 2010. Beginning in late 2013, staff began formally incorporating greenhouse gas benefit cost considerations into all applicable solicitations as a scoring criterion. A good example of how benefit cost scoring criterion can affect a proposal review occurred recently when our agency was scoring projects and there was a tie. In this situation, the project with the better greenhouse gas cost benefit score was awarded the funding. Beyond the transportation greenhouse gas reduction benefits of the Energy Commission counts, we also report on cumulative and projected program benefits. We started doing that in 2011 in our Integrated Energy Policy Report, and that's through AB 109. Assembly Bill 109 requires the Commission to report on the expected benefit program benefits in terms of petroleum reduction, greenhouse gas emissions reductions, and criteria and pollutant matter emissions. The Commission is also required to report on the contributions of program-funded projects to a diverse portfolio of clean fuel and vehicle technologies in California. Over time, the Energy Commission has added assessments of job creation and public health benefits to our integrated energy policy reports. I mentioned this before, first produced the benefits report in 2011. And again, given the complexity of the calculations and the data needed to really get a comprehensive assessment of projected benefits across multiple technology categories over a 10-year time horizon, the Energy Commission has contracted with the National Renewable Energy Lab to help us with this. NREL provided the benefits analyses that you see in our 2013 and 2014 integrated energy policy reports. Most recently, in the 2014 integrated energy policy report update, it reported that the ARF-VTP funded projects have resulted in creation of almost 6,400 direct jobs, 2 to 5 tons per year reduction of PM 2.5, and the money invested to date is also anticipated to displace some 440 to 690 million gallons of petroleum fuel by 2025. As part of the 2014 Integrated Energy Policy Report process, the Energy Commission hosted a workshop specifically to gather expertise on how we can continue to improve our metrics and measures of the program's successes. We heard from representatives of federal and state agencies, regional air quality, regulatory agencies, environmental groups, utilities, and academia. And as a result, the Energy Commission staff are exploring options and beginning to adapt and improve future investment plans and funding solicitations with additional data and assessment tools. Before I close, one other area that I'd like to highlight for you is the Energy Commission's work on expanding outreach and increasing participation of communities that have not traditionally been well represented in the ARF-VTP funding activities. So in keeping with the spirit of Senate Bill 535, as well as the spirit of Assembly Bill 340, the Energy Commission will continue to expand outreach to disadvantaged communities and underrepresented communities. In addition, we are continuing to develop strategies that can direct ARF-VTP funding to those communities, including scoring preferences, set-asides, and geographically focused solicitations, as well as methods for tracking, monitoring, and reporting on the participation of these communities in our program. For example, the Alternative and Renewable Fuel and Vehicle Technology Program. We held late last year 5 grant funding opportunities 101, so to speak. And we held those workshops in Oakland, Los Angeles, San Bernardino, Fresno, and Sacramento. And the idea here was really to increase participation in the California Energy Commission programs to let them know what the ARF-VTP does, how to apply for it, how to get on our listservs, who to contact if they're looking for information. And we did that in a series of 5 workshops at the end of last year that we plan to continue into this year. So in closing, the Alternative and Renewable Fuel and Vehicle Technology Program represents a diverse portfolio of just over $500 million in projects that are contributing directly to the reduction of California's transportation greenhouse gas emissions. And the program continues to evolve in important ways, such as what funding mechanisms we use, how we incorporate data and metrics into our project selection processes in order to continue leveraging the most benefit we can in a very dynamic and advanced transportation sector. So thank you again for allowing me to speak to you on this important topic, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have for me.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Brian Innes and then open it up for questions. Go ahead, Brian. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, good afternoon, Chairman Bell, Chairman Wykowski, and members of the Senate. I appreciate the invitation to be here today to talk about 2 of the cap and trade proceeds programs, the Low Carbon Transit Operations Program, which I'd like to refer to today by the shorthand of the Operations Program, and the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, which I'd like to refer to today with the shorthand of the Capital Program, because our program, like some of yours, have awkward acronyms. The Operations Program is a formulaic program that has about 180 eligible recipients and will fund improvements to increase transit ridership and reduce greenhouse gas emissions at transit agencies across the state. The Capital Program is a competitive program to fund transformational projects that will reduce greenhouse gases by advancing an integrated and modernized transit system. The committee asked me to be prepared to respond to 4 questions, and I'm happy to provide responses to each of those. The first one was, How is the agency implementing the newly created Low Carbon Transit Operations Program and the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program? Caltrans and the Transportation Agency are implementing both programs after a robust public outreach process. The administration held workshops both before and after releasing the draft guidelines. We had a total of 8 publicly noticed workshops, including a web-based session. This allowed us to present both programs to the public and to potential recipients. We additionally held meetings with legislators and legislative staff to get input as we formed the program guidelines. The guidelines were developed with input from this public engagement and through coordination of our agency and administration partners, the Air Resource Board and others in the administration. For the operations program, $25 million was appropriated in the 2014 Budget Act, and 5% of auction proceeds starting in 2015-16 are continuously appropriated for this program. The funds are based on an existing formula that takes into account population and also transit agency revenue generation. This is also called the State Transit Assistance Formula. Over 180 regional entities and local transit agencies are eligible for the funding. To receive funds, each eligible recipient will provide an expenditure plan that describes how their project meets the requirements of the program and guidelines. Each project must meet these minimum requirements of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, increasing transit ridership through improved and expanded service, and where applicable, providing benefits to disadvantaged communities. Caltrans and the Air Resource Board will jointly review the projects to ensure they meet these requirements. There are 2 cycles of projects to be submitted this year. The funds we anticipate will be distributed one tranche on April 15th, just a couple weeks from now, and also on June 30th of this year. Effective next fiscal year in 15-16, agencies will be able to accrue funds over multiple years to accomplish more costly projects in this program. Agencies are also able to combine funding within their region for projects of regional priority. And these combination of funds within the region can be done as long as the disadvantaged community benefits are maintained. As far as the capital program, $25 million was appropriated in the 2014 Budget Act for that program, and 10% of auction proceeds starting in 2015-16 will be available for the program. The adopted guidelines include an initial 2-year program of projects that include that 15-16 auction proceeds. Estimates for funding available in 2015-16 were based on the level of the governor's proposed 15-16 budget, which was released, of course, on January 10th. This included $100 million for the capital program assumed for next year. The deadline for the first call for projects is April 10th of this year, with the Transportation Agency publishing an initial program of projects by June 30th. The projects will be presented to the California Transportation Commission at their August meeting. The guidelines for the capital program state the following. The Transportation Agency intends to fund a small number of transformational projects that improve statewide transportation network in this first programming cycle. They may include, for example, both lower cost projects focused on integration, reliability, and enhancement of service, and higher cost capital expansion projects. In addition, the agency seeks projects that link key destinations and improve accessibility to economic opportunities. The second question was, what role will these new programs play in reducing transportation sector greenhouse gas emissions? The operations and the capital program projects will achieve greenhouse gas emissions by increasing ridership on mass transit and rail, to reduce automobile vehicle miles traveled, and by expanding the use of cleaner mass transit vehicles. Greenhouse gas reductions will be achieved through expenditures such as implementing bus rapid transit connections to intercity rail, encouraging people to shift from cars to mass transit through transit pass programs, using zero-emission or hybrid buses on new routes, expanding service hours and frequency. The capital program has an emphasis on integration, as I just explained, of various transit systems. Californians will see an immediate air quality benefit in 2015 as projects funded by these programs are implemented. Greenhouse gas reductions from the program expenditures will be maintained through the length of the new or expanded transit service. In cases where transit systems or equipment are purchased, the greenhouse gas emissions will continue through the life of those vehicles, which for transit vehicles is typically 12 years or more. The third question was, how is the agency monitoring and tracking the benefits of these programs in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions as well as other co-benefits? We will monitor the progress and completion of each project through semi-annual reports to ensure the activities funded from the auction proceeds are timely, within approved scope and cost, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, as well as achieving the other benefits cited in the original application. Once the project is complete, Caltrans will require an annual report to verify compliance with the greenhouse gas reductions and other benefits, as well as performing audits of transit operators, and they already do that through some of the other funding programs we have. Lastly, a question was asked, how will these programs benefit disadvantaged communities? The operations program recipients whose service areas include disadvantaged communities are required to provide a minimum of 50% of the received funding to benefit these disadvantaged communities. In the case of the capital program, a minimum of 25% benefit to disadvantaged communities is required. Caltrans is using the guidelines adopted by the Air Resource Board to help determine what types of projects benefit disadvantaged communities and will help ensure that the project sponsors meet these requirements. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to testify today and welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian. And we'll have a few questions now. I'd like to ask maybe the three of you, in terms of looking at the ahead when we're talking about the governor's plan for some strategic goals to 2030 and beyond. Looking at the way we accomplish that, you have to look at like cost effectiveness, and I know we started to work on that last year, Richard, with your staff and setting up a unit. How's that going? Can you give us kind of a status of that and what is happening with that particular item and maybe some of the other agencies as well?
Sure, Chairman. In fact, I'm going to give you a specific example because I think it's easier to track. So the
otherwise, it's just sort of a giveaway program. We need to have some kind of measurement metrics. And
absolutely. So an example would be, so for the petroleum reduction target in the state of the governor's 50% petroleum reduction 2030. So if you look at its base, it's where is the petroleum being used? So you're talking about primarily diesel, gasoline. And then the question is, what are the strategies that can yield that reduction? And then what we do is to look at what are the policies that are already in place. Zero emission vehicle policy, the low GHG policies for motor vehicles, the low carbon fuel standard, and look at the question about how far will that get us? How far will that get us to 2030? And it's about halfway to that target, close to it, in that ballpark. Then the question is, do those existing policies serve as an effective platform for the additional reductions? That's the kind of analysis that's done through in fact, one of the policies that we'll be looking at as part of the 50% reduction is looking at pushing low carbon fuel standard out beyond 2020, going through a public process, looking at what kind of fuels be available, what are the costs, what are the underlying economics, what's the infrastructure, consulting with economists, going through a workshop process, a public process to ultimately any recommendation that we would make, for instance, for a regulation, an amendment to a regulation, would follow that process and ultimately be subject to a policy discussion by our board. So that's the case. That's just a microcosm, but it's really an example of all the regs that we would be considering and the process that we would go through.
So you're looking at like what's the most effective, cost-effective way of achieving those added benefits that you need to reach the target.
And what are the,
You have some standards and some analysis for
what are the costs and what are the co-benefits, which is a really important theme of a comment that I made here that was really woven through my testimony, which was GHG reductions are very important and meeting the targets important, but also where can we be effective, where can we be most cost effective from a co-benefit standpoint. And the policies that I talked about, particularly the fuels and vehicle policies, yielded substantial reductions of ozone-forming pollutants, as well as diesel particulate. For instance, the different strategies on freight reduce diesel particulate, which tends to be particular issue near hubs, near ports, rail yards, freight centers. So we get the health benefits associated with reductions of diesel PM. Diesel PM is also a potent climate forcer, and you get the GHG benefits. So that's the right way to look at these strategies.
Okay, maybe some of the other agencies could respond also.
I would echo a lot of what Richard just said. You know, within AB 118, AB 8, we have 11 criteria that the legislature has asked us to look at, including the cost-benefit score. And so we're always taking that into account when we are making our investments. We're always trying to maximize the benefits there. And so I would underscore or reiterate that co-benefits point. That's why zero-emission vehicles oftentimes are so exciting for us, because you get your petroleum reduction. Oftentimes, a lot of these technologies are being developed in California, so you get the jobs and the economic development that's associated with it. You're not putting out the climate pollution, and you're also not putting out a lot of the criteria, so you're getting a lot of bang for your buck when you invest in that type of strategy. At the Energy Commission, we're always looking to invest in things that have the potential to be transformative. We're a lot of times in the pre-commercial space, and we're trying to help people get from pre-commercial to commercial. And so the zero-emission vehicle bus that I mentioned, that's in Stockton, it's an all-electric bus. It can go up to 100 miles. And, you know, it has to be matched to the route, of course, and be able to do the whole route, and then it can. Okay. And it drops the passengers off, and while the bus driver takes a quick break and then reloads, it's charged itself back up 80%, and it can go out and do its route again. And they really liked the 2 that they have, and they're looking to get 5 or 6 more. And so we're looking for technologies like that really get the transit agencies excited, that get, and because of the total cost of ownership that goes along with them, that's the space that we're trying to invest in. A lot of times we're also looking to strategically invest in projects that might help demonstrate how you overcome a barrier to the commercialization. And so some of the projects that we've invested in terms of like waste to energy, for example, it's what are the pieces that are the most expensive part, and how can you make that a little bit less expensive such that then the technology can become commercial. And so we're always kind of looking strategically in that space with our dollars as well.
Yes, and can I ask on buses, maybe both you? The Federal Transit Administration contributes to buses, okay? So are you looking at the proposed legislation in Washington, D.C. on that, or maybe it's your agency that tracks that, Brian? But I think it's something we need to do, is to see what the federal agencies are looking at in terms of their reauthorization, the MAP 21 or the Mobile 21. I call it the immobile 21 because nothing's happening. It's not moving. We got to get going. We need to make sure that those statutes, when they're adopted and they do that 5-year, I think there could be a breakthrough. We don't know. We'll find out. If it is possible to have a breakthrough on that. Traditionally, infrastructure is kind of a bipartisan thing in Congress. That's the way they work it usually. If that happens, we want to make sure that it reflects these programs that we have, so that we can match what we're doing with what they're trying to do at the federal level. That money would really accelerate, clean buses in the transit industry. And transit industry, buses wear out pretty fast, so they need to replace those buses. Yeah, they all say that to me. They're screaming at me all the time. Okay, so I just thought I'd ask that question. Do we want to ask any other questions? Senator Cannella and then Senator Allen, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your very detailed presentation. So I appreciate the time. Mr. Corey, so we've got, we're doing all these things to, to reduce greenhouse gases and protect our environment. And the four big ones are the Advanced Clean Car Program, SB 375, which you talked about, Cap and Trade Program, which you discussed, and the Low Carbon Fuel Standard. Can you tell us how much greenhouse gases have been reduced because of these programs? And maybe some of them are in their infancy, but, and this is, Senator Bell talked about this as well. I mean, these are very expensive. Can you tell us if they're working or not?